AdYack.
You're listening to AdYack. AdYack is the official podcast of the AAF Greater Lehigh Valley Ad Club. Our mission is to inspire creativity and enhance the professional development of the advertising and marketing communities where we live and work. I'm your host, Bill Childs, and I'll talk with artists, designers, writers, directors, photographers, along with those who work in a creative capacity. Our aim here is to serve as a creative resource to help you stay informed, entertained, and above all, inspired. But first, I want to thank ASR Media. We appreciate your support and collaboration. There are certain people you will meet throughout your life, and as soon as you meet them, you know they possess an innate ability to transcend and succeed in any environment. Martha DeFeo is one of those people. I briefly worked with Martha at Adams Outdoor Advertising, and I knew, even back then, she was on a mission. She encourages and inspires people to become the best version of themselves, both in their professional and personal life. She's a seeker of knowledge, a coach, and a mentor to many of her clients, and she doesn't give up when she believes in something, influencing others with her perseverance. Her search for meaning and her growth mindset has played a vital role in helping her grow into who she is today. As a marketing consultant, strategist, and business development leader, her background has evolved from marketing and design projects, speaking presentations, content creation, and web design to now running her own agency, Milk Marketing. Martha understands the value of authentic leadership and why you need it for sustainable growth and success. She found her purpose in helping entrepreneurs build and grow their businesses through her mentorship programs and strategic advisory work. She relies on her curiosity, creativity, and confidence every time she meets with potential clients, and we talk about how she helps those leaders embrace their courage and authenticity. Martha is proof positive that you must be willing to fail fast and learn faster if your actions aren't delivering the desired results. Martha and I yak it up about the transformative power creativity has in changing lives, businesses, and collaborative relationships, the lessons we learned working for an inspirational leader, the best piece of advice she's ever received, and how it continues to inspire her to this day. Here is my AdYack with Martha DeFeo. Martha DeFeo, welcome to AdYack.
Thank you. It's so nice to see you, Bill. It's been a while.
It has been a while. Great to have you on. I got a lot of stuff I want to cover with you, but what I want to start at is I interviewed John Hayes, the former GM of Adams, a couple episodes ago, and that's where you and I first met. You and I first met when we were working at Adams. I started at Adams in the fall of 1999 and left in the fall of 2001, which was right after 9/11. So, but in that time, we worked together with Bob. And I want to get your interpretation of that time, what you were hired for when you were hired there, and what was your experience like, and what was your, how did you process all of that after you left Adams and John's leadership? So talk to me about that a little bit.
Wow. Well, first of all, I did listen to that podcast, and that was a great episode. And it was so nice to hear John Hayes again. He left a lasting impression on me, and I think everyone else that worked for him. Right. He was such an amazing leader. I think I heard you say the Zen
like a Zen
master of creative leadership. No, he was amazing. So I was hired as a marketing coordinator, and I helped with, sales deliverables and proposals and things like that. And then I got promoted to marketing manager, director of marketing, actually. And I just loved working there. That set the bar for companies that I believe in and feel like they had the culture, the right way. And but working for John Hayes, he was amazing. And I remember how much he would encourage and support us in any role that you had, that we had there at Adams. And, you'd ask him a question and he would say, "What do you think?" So he really wanted to encourage that conversation. He would give his opinion also if was asked of it, but he wanted to encourage that creative thinking and input from everyone. And I thought that he was just an amazing person to work for. And he really brought us all together, I thought. And we had such a tight team at the time.
Well, and if you listen to what he talks about, how he was very particular in the people that he brought in and that he hired. He was very like methodical about the people that he believed would work within that environment that he was trying to bring about. And I think your hiring wasn't just random either. He saw something in you. He saw, that's the great thing about leaders, that they see things in you that you don't even see yourself. And then you kind of like
So
feel
true.
obligated to kind of like live into what their vision is of you, right? And my
Right.
interpretation of you, what I remember is you were a seeker. You were a seeker of knowledge. Like you were like a sponge. I don't know if that was like your what you were trying to do, but I just remember like when you came up into the art room, like you wanted to know what's going on. What are you guys doing? What are you working on? Why did you choose that? Like you were very inquisitive, and that was cool to be, because that's what you want. From you want to talk. I love to talk about the designs and the thought process behind the stuff that we were doing. So is that your
Right.
recollection of yourself as well?
That is me. Yes, that is me still to this day. I've always had a growth mindset, and I feel like everyone should adopt that. And especially when it comes from the top down. So if someone has influenced you that has a growth mindset and they run their organization that way, it changes the game for everyone, because you grow not only professionally but personally as well, right? So I think that really helped me get, grow my career. And that's why I've always been promoted, because I'm interested in learning as much as I can. And I like to understand the meaning behind why is this, why are we doing this? And that's why I would ask you questions all the time.
Mhm.
What does this client want? And what are you doing? Why are you creating this for them? And what is, what is their outcome, their goal for this ad campaign? And I wanted to really understand that. And we would talk about that. This is the goal that the client wants. We would talk to sales, and it was just such a great dynamic working with sales, creative, marketing, production guys, everyone.
Mm-hmm. No,
It
John,
really
John
was.
did an amazing job. He set up the environment
He did.
and he stayed out of the way. He let it run. He believed in what he was setting up, right? He believed in it.
Hmm.
He set it up. He hired the right people. He said it took a little while to get the right people in. He knew it would take a little while to get the market to kind of, and the clients to kind of embrace what he was doing, but it worked. And I'm grateful for the opportunity, but at the same time, I'm a little disappointed because that was only 2 years of my career, and I've been searching
Right.
that feeling ever since. And so, I'm not ashamed to admit that I've been running the John Hayes leadership program at every company that I've worked at. It's just John
Same.
Hayes in another
Same.
form, but it's how he, be vulnerable. Don't lead with your ego. Listen more than you talk. I mean,
Listen.
it's all there. I love the guy. I can't say enough about it.
Yes.
You know?
I 100% agree with you. I 100% agree with you. And I think this is why I feel that I'm a good leader today, because even though my career has mostly been focused on marketing, I was always in management and leadership roles towards the later parts of my career. And really, John had a big influence on that, because I understand, empathy, and I understand, being supportive and encouraging. But the way that John taught us how to not be afraid to fail
Mm,
was one of the biggest things that, it's hard for anyone, no matter how much you try that. It's
mhm.
still hard every time you fail, but you still can't be afraid of it. And that's how we grow, right?
Yeah.
So he really demonstrated strength by being a creative leader. And I adopted that and I apply that now in my leadership roles. And it's John Hayes in the background still
Sure, absolutely. Well,
for
that's a great
me.
segue. So catch me up on what you've been doing since you left Adams. It's been, a couple number of years, but what are you doing now, and what do you enjoy about what you're doing now?
So right now I have a company, Milk Marketing. Milk represents four elements that I believe are so important, when you're running your marketing: management, intelligence, leadership, and knowledge.
Oh, that's cool.
Those four things, I feel like whenever I talk to a potential client or even companies I've worked for, when they have issues with their marketing output or the outcome they're looking for from their marketing, I find that it falls into one of those many of those categories, or at least one of those categories. Either they're not managing things efficiently or effectively, they don't use data and really understand what's going on and keep their finger on the pulse of that, to make, data-driven decisions. They don't have the leadership, good strategic leadership that, really guides the whole team and the marketing strategic plan, and then knowledge. They don't stay current on knowledge. I mean, you see how fast marketing evolves. It's so rapid, and we have to stay current on, the latest trends and the latest tools, and we have to stay up to date on all of this, because that impacts the outcome that companies are trying to achieve with their marketing. And if you don't, now we have AI, and it's something that you have to be adaptable, and you have to stay current on the knowledge. So I think those 4 elements are really key. And that's why I built Milk. I started doing consulting work, and I thought, wow, I should really get paid for this. And so I started doing that. So I stepped into companies, helping them with their strategic marketing planning and implementation. And it's really interesting. When I started my company, I went into it because I have a corporate background. So I went into it thinking that my ideal target audience would be corporate clients, because I step in and help them with strategic marketing, planning, and implementation. And then I also coach their teams. They usually have one or several marketing people on their team, and I help them coach them for their own personal and professional growth as well, so they can achieve better outcomes. And then I sort of transformed into a little bit different of a target audience now, and a little bit different of a focus. I started going to networking events and talking to smaller business owners, and I really feel the struggle, with what they're going through right now, especially with this economy. And so I started to think, I really want to help smaller businesses rather than these corporate businesses that are already doing pretty well. They just want to do better. Instead of helping people, big business owners make more money, I wanted to help smaller business owners they're in that growth phase, or they're just starting out and they really want to do well. And marketing is a struggle. People try to piece things together along the way, especially if they're a new business, and then it gets out of control. So I started working with smaller businesses, and of course, nonprofits are my favorite to work with because they're purposeful. So I started working for a lot of purposeful businesses, and I feel like if you're making an impact, that means something to me. So I feel a better connection with those type of businesses and those type of entrepreneurs they have a purpose, they have a mission. And so that's what I've been doing is trying to refocus my target audience into the nonprofit world, and also business owners that have a passion for what they're doing.
Okay, all right.
And
yes. But you grew up in the Lehigh Valley, right? So you're from Allentown, Bethlehem,
right? Pennsylvania, right?
Okay, and you're based in Florida, right?
Yes, I'm in northeast Florida now.
Okay, it's funny. One of the things that John had done, which was really his big risk, with Adams, was he pushed creativity to the top. Like, he basically said, I data research, I get it, revenue, yep, hiring, yes, expenses, all that business stuff. And he put creativity at the top, and then basically, set the playing field, and then got out of the way. So how do you advise your clients when you talk about creativity? Because let's be honest, creativity has not had the best PR, out there, because it's, as soon as you say that word, it kind of turns people off, because they just think, oh my God, the creative, oh, here we go, right? Lamps and beanbag chairs.
It's amazing.
Or creativity,
right?
another word for not getting anything done, right? That's the mind,
right?
I think, sometimes, of leaders. So what's been your experience with that? How do you bring the creativity into what companies are doing or going to do?
I see that. Right. I see that often. And from leaders, they misunderstand creativity. They don't really, if they don't get it, they really don't understand it. And unfortunately, what they don't realize is they're really blocking their growth, right? And their innovation. And it even improves relationships, don't you think, in some way? 100%. It allows us to solve problems more openly. It combats stagnation when you feel kind of at a plateau or stuck, but it really facilitates growth and innovation in a company. So it's really something when I see this, and that you try to explain it to a business owner and they really don't understand, but it really is necessary. Without it, there's so much missing that they're looking for, and they can't find it because there's no growth, there's no innovation, there's no good teamwork. I feel like creativity makes everything better. It really does. Just creativity is, people think of creativity as something artful sometimes, and of course that's really important. When you see something creative, like a good ad, right? You feel it, you remember it, it stays in your head. That's creativity, as far as that goes. But it's also, like I said earlier, problem solving. You have to be able to be creative. You have to be creative when you're working with different clients and you're trying to accommodate them, or get the outcomes that they're looking for. So it's really important to think creatively. I think about creativity, I understood it more when I started working with Adams, also because of some of the amazing campaigns that we had. You reminded me of the RCN campaign when I was listening to the podcast with John Hayes, and just no words, just, it was so memorable. So I mean, that's the peak of creativity. But if it falls under all different aspects of running a business and being able to maintain that growth over time, when you're faced with all kinds of economic challenges and different turnover, there's a lot of reasons to look to creativity, lean on creativity.
I posted this graphic a couple weeks ago on LinkedIn. It was a visual representation of the creative process, and this is why I think it's so misunderstood, and it freaks a lot of people out, because you want to start at A, right? The graphic shows the letter A, and then the line continues, and then it goes all squiggly and all kinds of crazy, and then it arrives at B, right? And it's like, how do you monetize that portion in the middle where it's just all scribbling around, right? That's like, almost like managers want, look, why can't you think of what you have to solve and solve it? Like, why do you need that middle?
Right.
I don't know. I didn't come up with how the creative process works. I just know that that's how it works, and you have to be open to that. And you have to it just doesn't work any other way. You have to kind of, you state your strategy, you do your information process, right? You gather as much information as you can, and then somewhere in there an idea is going to emerge. If you allow for the process to happen. One of the worst things you can do is to try to force an idea when you're not ready, or the idea is not ready. You ever work with someone, or you're kind of like, you're not even thinking about like necessarily how to solve it, and it comes to you, that aha moment,
right?
that Archimedes in the
Yes.
bathtub trying to measure the crown moment. I love those moments, but you can't get so caught up that they're not happening, and think, somehow think that you've run out of ideas, and it's time to hang up your laptop or your lava lamp, or
right.
I think that's what causes a lot of tension, is it's hard to kind of track that messy part in the middle, because innovation is messy.
That's so true. And the thing is too, it's, you can't always have that miracle of getting from A to B on a clear line, right? It's always a messy line. And the thing that a lot of leaders don't understand, but John Hayes got this, was failure is necessary. It's a fast track, right, to getting the result that you want. You have to be able to fail. And some business owners don't want people to fail, because they feel like, almost like it's a waste of time and money. But when you have the freedom to fail, and you get to apply things, of course, like you said, you do your due diligence, you research, you do as much inquiry as possible.
Yeah.
You inquisitive, right? Then, but you also have to be able to go for it and do something, even though it might fail, but you'll learn so fast then, and you'll be able to come out at the end with such a beautiful creative results that'll be more successful in the long run. So that messy part is so good and necessary, especially the part where you fail.
But
and
here's
it leads to success.
This is what kills me. This is really what kills me about a lot of this stuff with business owners and leadership, is a lot of what a leader needs today are not things that you would think, or that we were taught. Okay. Vulnerability. A leader absolutely has to be vulnerable. Okay. That runs counter and sounds counter what you think of a leader. Leader, strong, like, I got this, I know where I'm going. There is nothing more powerful than when a leader can say, honestly, you know what? I don't know. I don't know.
Right.
Can you teach me?
Let's figure it out. Yeah.
Let's figure it out together. Why is that so hard to understand, Martha? Because
I
once you,
don't
once
know.
you go into that place as a leader who, you know, you don't have to have all the answers. You shouldn't have all the answers. That's what you need your team for. So if you can say,
Right.
honestly, I don't know, you open up a whole can of worms of trust, of a relationship, and a willingness to learn. Just that one right there, vulnerability, right? Then you got empathy. Then you have creativity. You have these and the willingness to let your team fail. They have to know that you have their back. And if
Yes.
and no one is going to say, okay, well, today I'm going to lose the company $10 million. No one is thinking that. It's an environment.
Right.
It's an environment where it's okay to maybe say an idea that might sound stupid. Because if you remember in the creative sessions, and I learned this lesson, a lot of times we got a good idea on the way back from a bad one, right?
Right.
So, and I say
Right.
bad ones.
Even
No,
bad ideas.
yeah,
Right.
it can be
They
fertilizer
turn
for
into
good ideas,
something.
but so many people.
Exactly.
Were you in the creative sessions? You were, right?
Yes. Yeah, they
Okay.
were great. They were so much fun.
I
And
tried
really got a
everything.
lot of great ideas from everyone.
Yeah. And,
You know what I think is the thing that holds people back too is the comfort zone. And
ooh,
I love this term, and I think I heard you say this term, and I always use this term. Do you want to stay in comfortable mediocrity, or do you want to take it to the next level? Because if you're afraid to fail, you'll remain in that state of comfortable mediocrity.
yep,
And it's just, you have to, the only way to get out of that is to be creative and not be afraid to fail, right?
exactly. And that goes for business as well as personal lives. In your personal
So
life.
true.
Well,
So
I
true.
think creativity, you know, the mindset of creativity, to your earlier thing that you were talking about, um, yes, it can do amazing things inside a business, but it can also do amazing things for your life. Because if you live in a creative mindset, everything opens up. You're open to new experiences. You're open to trying new food. You're open to meeting new people. That's how learning happens, right? So if you're just all closed off and you suffer from this, you know, imposter syndrome where you're worried people are going to find out that, you know, I remember for a lot of years I struggled with the fact that I didn't have a college degree. You know, that really bothered me. I did not go to college.
Yes.
I went right from high school into the workforce. And I thought that was cool at the time. But then you get out there for a while and you realize all these people with degrees in college and, you know, people going MBAs, getting doctorates, you know, feels a little uncomfortable for me. But I had to be able to push past that and be okay with it, that I didn't have a college degree.
Well, I feel like people that do that work so much harder. I mean, not that people who go to college don't. I feel like people that weren't able to get their degree for one reason or another, they tend to work harder to get further, and they have a disadvantage there because they have a stigmatism that people look at them and say, oh, they're not degreed. But something Elon Musk said is, and I can't remember his exact quote, but he was talking about this exact thing. And he said, so many people, they go right to college. They don't really know what they really want to be. They just go and they get their degree and they often don't use it. And he said, I actually don't even care if you have a college degree. I care how hard you're going to work and the kind of person you are. And if you could think outside of the box, which is creativity again. But so I think, yeah, it really advances you in your personal and professional growth when you have to try harder and you have to be creative. And I think that's something that we have to get past our limiting beliefs and say, that's something that we're making up in our own head, right? We have to look at who do we want to be, and who, all those limiting beliefs that are just negative thoughts. What we need to do is adopt a growth mindset and get out of our own way, and really just learn and start learning and never stop, find our purpose and really strengthen who we want to be and how we want to impact, the world and leave a legacy in our lives. We have to be able to look past those limiting beliefs. And it's the hardest thing. This is something that I teach in my programs and to some of my clients. They keep finding themselves stuck. And when I dig into why they're stuck, it's because often they have that imposter syndrome. Well, there's so many people that are better than me, or, I don't know if I could do this. What if I fail? So It's all those things that happen to us, but they're really just negative thoughts. We just have to really reframe our thinking. And that's super hard to
It
do.
is.
And
I
you have
went
to do it every day.
a lot of years feeling inadequate, that I didn't have a degree. And then I finally got to a point where I realized, my God, like I have so much experience that even if I did have a degree, it
So
would have
much to
all been
give.
stuff that I would have learned 25 years ago. It would all have been
Exactly.
anyway. So I've within the past couple of years, I finally managed to clear that and be okay with it, because it is what it is. I mean, I can always go back to school whenever I want, and it really I do believe that it set me up for the mindset of what you just described, of someone who always felt that I had to do it better because of that fact that I didn't have a college degree. So whether I pushed myself out of my comfort zone to do speaking engagements, to go speak to colleges and universities on the topic of creativity, I think was clearly one of the outputs of me not having a degree, kind of feeling like I wanted to just go share my knowledge and share what I knew. And I started, after I started doing a lot of those talks, I would do the talks, and they would always ask me back, and I would always love doing them, and I would evolve the programs, and I look forward to kind of going out and sharing that knowledge with the next generations. But what started to kind of happen was I realized, my God, I know I'm doing this talk on creativity and how it relates to marketing and business, but if you're really paying attention, it's really about how to live your life.
Yes.
I was like, and then I started bringing that a little bit into the presentations as well. Yes, it's a marketing advertising wrapper, but it's really a way to look at the world, a way to roll in the world with an open mind and an open heart. And the creativity is at the foundation of all of that kind of growth mindset and vulnerability and empathy. It all can pay homage to creativity. Creativity is what allows those kinds of things to happen, I believe. So how do you get people who might be stuck and caught in their own way? We used to talk about that a lot at Adams, like they're in their own way. You could see it, someone that's in their own,
right.
They're causing their own growth to not happen because they're stuck. What do you do? What are some things that you do for clients or people that you work with to help them get unstuck?
So the first thing I do is try to identify the reasons that they're getting stuck. And so a lot of times it comes down to limiting beliefs, excuses that we make, and we make them all the time. And sometimes we think we're protecting ourselves. And that's what happens sometimes. We think that we try to go through all the negative scenarios in our heads so that we could make sure we're prepared for them in a way, which, being prepared and thinking about, what could happen is good, but also it really kind of sets you back. So I feel like a lot of people, they tend to be worried about what's going to happen. So they don't do anything. They stay in that comfortable mediocrity, right? They stay in that comfort zone because they're thinking, I would love to be a business owner. I want to be an entrepreneur. I think about it all the time. But then what happens is they think about all the negative things that go with that, so we talk about, when you mentioned mindset is everything. It helps you. It helps you to really navigate life. And I keep saying, we keep going back to creativity, but I really feel like it has an impact on everything. Thinking about your mindset. And when you think about those things that are negative and those things that you're worried about, then if you look to creativity, if you think about how can I creatively get through this? How could if I have a growth mindset, what could I learn to help me get past this level of stuck?
And vulnerability comes into play there, because you got to be willing to ask for help. You have to be willing to say, I don't know all about that as much as I should, but I'm willing to learn. I think, your negative self-talk thing is interesting, because we're so good at coming up with all the reasons why something won't work. Well, why don't we think about one reason why it would?
Exactly. It starts with, so yes, I was going to say, it starts with our awareness of it happening, right? And then, we have to pay attention to to our thoughts, and then we have to make good choices. Okay. So it's not one of the things I say to myself. It's like a mantra I say to myself in my head. I say, it's not how you want to, it's how you want to see it, not how your mind perceives it. So you're in fear state, right? Or in worry state or protective mode. Your mind perceives it one way, like, yes, running a business is going to be challenging. It's going to be really hard. You're going to fail. You might fall apart. You might lose all your money. It's not how your mind perceives it. It's how you want to see it. So I want to see it successful. So that's how I'm going to think about it. Yes, I'm going to fail. I'm going to do that. I'm accepting that fate, but that's something that I can get through. It's how I want to see it is I want to see success. So it's really important that you embrace creativity and embrace what you want out of life rather than what could happen in the negative sense. What could happen in the positive sense? Go with that.
Do you think that, I mean, I read this once that they say that most people, they're not afraid of success. They're not afraid of failure. They're afraid of succeeding. What if
Yes.
I do this and it works? Like, what if
I can't handle it?
Right.
Yeah.
Or what if I do this marketing campaign and now I have to like hire more people because now I have more business? It's like, what do you think about that?
Yes.
Do you think there's some truth in that people are more afraid of
So true.
success than they are of failing?
I think they're afraid equally of both. They're afraid of failure and they already think they're going to fail. And then also on the other side, they think, well, what if I do this and then I don't know how to be a business owner? And it's really scary. It really is. I don't know how do I hire someone? What if I get overwhelmed and I can't handle the work? My clients get upset with me because I can't fulfill the obligations that I've set myself up for. So yes, I think they're equally afraid of failure and success. But the key word there is what they're afraid of. And you have to move past your fears, right? Especially when it's something that you really want out of life. And it goes back to I talk to my clients about, what is your purpose? Are you living your purpose? And a lot of the clients I'm talking about are the ones that are starting out and they want to build a business and they want to be successful and they want to reach higher levels of their potential. The only way you can get there is if you push through fear. So I say, you want to be successful, you have to adopt the 3 C's: courage to start, and you just need to go for it. It's going to be scary anyway, just go and do it. And then commitment, follow through. You need to follow through. And then confidence, celebrate the little wins of all the ways that you've succeeded. And you keep adopting those 3 C's over and over. Courage, I got to do this. Commitment, keep going, no matter how much it's scary or you fail or it's hard, keep going. And then have confidence, like, great, I accomplished that, even if it's a little thing. I try to
little wins. You have
gratitude and think about that.
I agree with that. And that's going to be an ongoing process. That's not just going to be like a one-time thing. And then you're like, okay, I'm good. I did the courage thing. That was last week. Why we're, right. Or how do you feel about, yeah. How do you feel about, one of the things that I thought was amazing, again, with John Hayes, was with his little 10-point plan that he kind of came up with. He this is what's going to happen if we do this. So he gave us a mission, right? We kind of like, I felt like we were all a part of something that was bigger than ourselves, right? We were going to change the market. We were going to do this. So everybody bought into that. But I think number 9 or maybe even number 10 on his 10-point list was, oh, by the way, this will increase revenue. It wasn't number 1.
No. Yes, it was at the end.
3. We had to do all those other things first, because I think if you're just going in business just to make money, you're already done. You're already going for the wrong reason. And I think that speaks to purpose and mission. And I want to work with people who are on a mission and have a purpose, or feel that they have a purpose, or have a dream that they believe in. That's exciting. That's the exciting. That's fun. That's a fun place to kind of inhabit. It's a cool world to live in when you can meet those people.
It really is.
I was going to ask you.
Yes, and
can you talk about a recent success of somebody that you you don't have to name names or anything, but someone that you've worked with or even that you're currently working with, that they're starting to believe, you're starting to see the light bulbs go off?
Well, so as far as creativity goes,
or just in helping them see a different way forward, embracing kind of those teachings that you're getting out of their own way, so anything like that.
yeah. So I love when I have this 90 days to launch program that I work with clients who are starting out. They're just starting. They want to start a business, and we've already gone through the mindset piece of it, which I still cover in the beginning, and in a shorter form. And they really are ready to go. They have everything, the fire inside of them. We work through their purpose, and my favorite part is at the end of the 90 days when we launch. I build them a website. They have everything they need. They have their elevator pitch. They have their business cards. They have a lead gen strategy, and they start getting clients, and it's just such an amazing experience to see. And I get to relive that over and over every time I get to have a client go through this program. And it's just because they're fresh and they're new to the entrepreneurial world, they get so excited about creativity, and really they understand it. They understand the growth mindset. They understand that's what they need to be able to do this, or they're going to stay in that comfortable mediocrity in their life, and they don't want that anymore. They want to ascend to the next level. And so it's like so amazing to see the transformation that happens when they get to see their purpose come to life, and they get to see that they're going to get paid to help people. So they're going to make an impact, and also as a sidebar, build their wealth, which is amazing that you can get to that point in life. But we should all strive for that, right? Instead of just going to work and doing the same tasks over and over again, unless that's what you want. But for the most part, we need to be able to strive for our higher levels of potential. And I love when people realize that and get to that point.
Now, we've been talking a lot about positive environments. Have you have any experience working in a toxic environment?
Yes, unfortunately, that does happen. I've been in toxic environments and toxic clients, and and those clients, it's the opposite of John Hayes, right? They don't get that creativity is necessary. They don't get that you can't get from A to B in a simple straight line. There's failure that has to happen. Time, there's time, that things take time, and they just want. I always say, like, I don't have my magic wand with me today. The magic wand isn't working today to wave, to change your whole world. And you know what else I noticed with toxic? I've only had experience with a couple of toxic clients, but what I notice in any type of toxic environment, it really is the management, so leadership, right? But it's a bad culture. So like it kind of transcends into all the team, all the departments, right? And all the individuals trying to make their, professional world and, grow their experience, and they're at this job and they're trying to do it. But when the environment is toxic, everyone suffers. No one could really grow the way they need to. And the success can't happen the way it needs to, because they're not able to fail. They always feel like there's pressure around them, and tension around them. So that toxic environment really affects the success of the company and also each individual person. And it's unfortunate, but you can't change people. So if it starts at the top, it's hard to convince a leader of the company what's happening when you see it happening. But you could change how you respond, and you can change your environment. So, one of the things that I try to do is change how I respond. And I'm very organized, and I try to go back with, okay, well, we have to try this process. If we can't try this process, then we're changing the environment, meaning we're not working together. So if somebody's at a job and they have a toxic environment and there's nothing they can do, they need to leave, because it's affecting their life, So yeah, that's tough.
As much as I grew during the John Hayes time I worked with John in so many multiple ways, doing some of the best work of my career, the amazing people that I work with, it went the exact opposite way in a toxic environment, to the point where I think I got depressed at one point. I was so,
Yes.
because I'm not used to, that's not my, I don't like to live like that. I don't like to see people, a leader treating other, people poorly, or not being
Hmm.
open to any new ways of doing things, or not even be open to even discussing it. That's what really kills me. Like, we can't even discuss this, really? We can't talk about like a possible new direction.
Wow. Right.
And it, yeah, there were a couple times I got really depressed about it, because I didn't know how to I didn't know my way through it. I didn't know what to do. It doesn't, you can be the most positive person in the world, but if you're in an environment where you're surrounded by people that are just like, just do your job and shut up. We're just, there's no
Yes.
mission, there's no purpose. It's upsetting to be a part of. And unfortunately, I had my share of those as well. But um yeah.
That's tough, but luckily you understand that you have to lean on creativity, right? And that really helps. But when you're in that kind of environment, you still can't help but be affected by it. And that's the thing, it mentally messes with you. So you can't think clearly. So you can't do your job as well as you can, and as well as you want to, because you can't think clearly. And the leaders don't understand that it's affecting their business. They're doing this to their business. They're
Yes.
causing a problem. And there's, you can't, but like I said, you can't change that person, right? So you have to do everything you can to lean into creativity, right? And try to figure out another way, or change your environment.
Yeah, I remember one time, at a place, there was a person in a meeting, never really spoke up, and this person must have summoned the courage that day to kind of say, I'm going to finally say something. And it was so tough to watch. This person said their idea,
Oh,
and the leader just immediately shut it down. It was like, we've done that already, we've tried that already, we've done that before. And you could just watch, I was watching this person just close in on themselves, and I realized, well, they'll never talk up again in this meeting, because they just offered an idea, and they were just basically thrown a cup of coffee in their face, kind of metaphorically.
wow.
And
Hmm.
it's just like, oh man, like, as a leader, you want people coming to you with ideas. They're not all going to be great, they're not all going to be awesome, but your job is to listen to them. That's it. Just listen, and give them the
Right.
platform, and not try to just immediately try to discount it and say like, oh, no, 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 that's not going to work. I mean, that's just terrible. And I've seen that, like, and it's hard to watch.
Yeah, that's really tough, because I've heard that too. Like, okay, that's not going to work because we tried that already. But there's so many facets to something sometimes, and it's like, okay, but how did you try? What was your approach?
Right.
And when you dig into it, sometimes you're like, well, you did, this wasn't the right thing to do in this one, this certain way. We can improve that by doing this instead. So sometimes those, like you said before, those bad ideas are never bad ideas. They could become something great. Sometimes it's good if you've tried something and it didn't work. Okay, that's failure, right? But you learn from that and say, well, if we can adjust this one thing, that could really make it work.
Mm-hmm.
So you're starting, you have that idea already. So yes, no idea is a bad idea. And it's that when someone in a leadership role shuts that down, then you really close yourself off from so much opportunity for
I
growth,
mean,
right? And something
yeah.
innovative.
Look what happened. Look what happened during COVID with all the resignations, people resigning, and
Mm.
this quiet quitting. I think what happened was there was a real awakening around people going, you know what? I don't have a mission. I don't like working at this place. I don't feel like there's a purpose.
Hmm.
If the only purpose is to like enrich the leader's pockets, what am I doing? And I think you saw a lot of
Right.
people take stock of their lives and decide, I'm gonna, you know what, life is short, and I'm gonna do what I want to do. I think that was a big, I think, that was huge, that happened during COVID, when people were just decided, nope, not doing it anymore. I remember,
Right. That was a big thing.
yeah,
Hmm.
I remember this one company that I worked at, um, and it was an Adams Outdoor, charismatic leader. Um, Loved talking to this person. Every time I had an interaction with this person, I came away motivated and energized and wanted to like take on the world. And what was cool was this person also felt the same way. They would say, "Wow, I love talking to you. I always get energized, and I feel like I'm." And I just thought, you know, I don't know how many other people had that relationship with this person, but I did. and we would schedule
That's
these
awesome.
these talks that would just with check-ins. We just like little check-in talks, and every time we had them, we never had an agenda. We just would start talking, and we would just share. We would just it was like building a relationship. But this was the owner of this was the CEO of the company, and it was really, God, I just thought to myself, everybody should have this experience or have this relationship. And I think this leader did have that type of relationship with other people, but I just know how it affected me. I mean, I would talk to this person and I felt like I could go lift 10 million pounds afterwards, or just or come up with like I loved it.
I love that. Yes.
That's what you want inside your organization. If you're leading a team or an organization, you want people wanting to talk to you, wanting to interact with you, because they feel better when they're done talking to you. They feel motivated, they feel inspired, they feel that's the promised land to me. If you can, and really,
Right.
what's it about? What do you have to be? You have to be someone who's just interested in other people, interested in the people that are working with you. That's all. And just be open and do more of the talking, or sorry, do more of the listening than the talking. That's it.
That's so true. And isn't it infectious?
Yes.
Like when you're in that type of situation and you have someone so inspiring and motivating and listens to you and supports you, right? Aren't you that way with the other people that you work with, your coworkers as well? Because you're feeling that and you want to reciprocate that whole good vibe.
Mhm. I believe if you can find the right leader, and that leader can go about bringing the right people into the company, setting up the mindset, setting up the mission, like letting everybody know, and if the simpler the plan, the better. There's nothing you can't do. There's nothing you can't do or
So
accomplish.
true.
Really.
Hmm.
I mean, to the point where like you'll be scratching your head going, I can't believe we did that. I can't believe we did. I can't believe I put a billboard campaign up on the roads of the Lehigh Valley with no words. No words.
Yes.
I did that. And
Yes.
and I
You
even got
encouraged.
shown this is what blew me away. And I covered this with John.
Uh-huh.
RCN wanted 1-800 ring RCN on the boards. They were given some
Right.
corporate line that had to go on, right? And John was like, no, we are not going to do that. We're sorry. And this went back and forth for weeks. And I thought, oh my God, you can't walk away from $75,000 in 1 month. That's a lot of money. That could make our year. I'm embarrassed to say this. I was willing to try to find a way to put 1-800 ring RCN on the boards, whether it be
Right. Right.
out. And John was like, no, Bill, I can't. We've come too far. I will look like everything I said didn't matter. Think about what he did there. He knew that if he added that 1-800 ring RCN on the board, it would have made everything he said up to that point. He would look like it was all just not true. Like he didn't believe it. He didn't believe in his core
Yes.
in creativity, because he would have went for the money instead. And he held out and said, no, you're not putting it up. The only way these boards go up is without 1-800 ring RCN. And that's how they went up. That's how
Well,
they
you
went.
know what, too? I think at the time, billboards weren't always looked at favorably, right? But what Adam started to do was really make them look beautiful.
Yep.
So, and I think that campaign too was a really beautiful campaign. And I think that it really got people to notice it more so than if you had a bunch of words and phone number on there. No one's going to be like, okay, let me remember this phone number in their head. They're not going to think that. They're going to remember that what it was for, and then they'll look it up later to call them if they need to call them for something. But it was the power of the creative campaign that it was so amazing that he stuck with that. And
Yeah.
I know what you're saying. You wanted to bend because you thought, I don't want to lose this client.
Yeah.
And if we just do this one little thing, what's the big deal? But it really
Right.
would have changed the whole
He knew
feeling, the
that.
whole
And
vibe of the.
I didn't realize how he was right about that. It would have made him look like he didn't really believe it, or that he was willing to buckle just to take the money. And yeah, that's a master class in leadership right there. That's a master class
Right.
in leadership, what he did. So pretty cool. And it went up, and then it won an OAAA marketing award.
That's right.
ESPN was certainly impressed. They won Who's Who that year, which was they had never won. The competition service
Right.
had always won Who's Who. RCN won Who's Who that year. So a lot of good things happened for them because of that campaign, but they were willing to take the risk. Ultimately, I knew the marketing director at the time really wanted the boards and would have been okay with 1-800-ring RCN not on them, but the corporate was just kind of hammering them, saying like, no, we got to have it, we got to have it, we got to have it. And John Hayes was like, no, you don't, no, you don't. And I remember
Wow.
they asked me to come up with a bunch of quotes, like quotes about like, be bold and mighty forces will come to your aid, be anything but mediocre. And we started faxing them to their corporate offices. So we put a little on Adam's letterhead. I would set up the text, be bold or be condemned to mediocrity, or be bold and mighty forces will come to your aid.
Wow.
We started faxing them like just as like faxed thought bombs. Kind of
Oh,
crazy
yeah.
that too. We were like teasing them. We were like kind of playing chicken with them, like saying like, you're not gonna get.
That's so funny.
Mm-hmm.
It's so
So
funny.
Marty, let me ask you this: what's the best piece of advice you ever received?
Oh, I would say, and just because I'm now in the entrepreneurial world, believe in yourself.
Mm.
There's so much doubt around every corner. We talked about limiting beliefs, and they don't ever go away. You have to always be mitigating those, right? But limiting beliefs and business challenges, it's so hard. But you have to stay true to your belief, and that you can do it, and great things will happen. You have to keep believing in yourself and keep pushing yourself. That's the best advice I ever received, because it's something that I have to keep telling myself, and it keeps me going. Like, you have to believe in yourself. What is the alternative?
Right.
There's,
Right.
and even though it seems so simple of a thing to say, believe in yourself, but the alternative is what we feel is comfortable, not believing in ourselves, staying
Well,
in comfortable mediocrity because we know what to expect here in the comfortable mediocrity world. But
well,
when you
I would
believe in
say,
yourself and you push yourself,
if you
right?
don't believe in yourself, how are you going to get anyone else to believe in you if you don't believe first?
That's so true.
Right. I always think
Very,
about,
very true.
yeah, I always think about this. What's something that you wish you would have knew when you were starting out that you know now? What's a lesson that you wish you knew back then?
Oh gosh. Okay. Let's see. So what I wish I knew then that I know now is really to adopt a growth mindset right away. I always had it, but I didn't realize that I could apply it to whenever I felt stuck in my professional growth. And so I feel like so many people, they don't understand that your mindset is everything, and it really is. So I wish someone would have told me, not just growth mindset, but your mindset in general. Anytime you have those negative thoughts, you have to get through it and believe in yourself, right? But if I knew that mindset was so powerful, and that that really changes your whole future. If you sit there and you think about all the things that you could not do very well, or that you didn't have a college degree, or that you didn't get to um, work with great people, and you let that hold you back, then you're never going to get further. And so I wish I knew that sooner. Just mindset is everything, and work on your mindset. It's something you have to work on all the time. It's not like something you could work on, read a book, and then you're good to go. It's like, it's always there in the background, and you always have to do that. And I'm a high achiever, and I think that that's something that high achievers need to understand. They understand it, they get it, that mindset is everything, and they have to believe in themselves, and they have to focus. But it is a constant battle, and I wish someone would have told me in the beginning, don't let it hold you back, because I see times in my life where I had a lot of trauma, and it really caused me to have negative thoughts, and
Mhm.
it got me stuck a lot of times throughout my life. And if I understood mindset at the time, I would have been able to get through it a lot easier. So yeah, that's something I really wish I would have known in the beginning, that I really embrace now, and it's helpful.
I like that. That's cool. I think for me, I wish I would have known that failure and success need each other. They're
Yes,
opposites. They need each other because we're not
they
really
do.
taught that in school. I mean, school kind of stigmatizes mistakes. Nobody wants to make a mistake, in school, and we kind of get indoctrinated into that to your point, mindset of like failure bad, failure bad, failure bad. And then you get out in the real world or just in your life and you realize like when you fail, there's learning that can happen within a failure, or as I like to call it, an unintended outcome. Failure just sounds so triggering, but right. I mean, you have to be, if you're not willing to fail, you're not going to succeed.
And they start teaching you that right in school, right in elementary school. You get in middle school, high school, you get graded, and you know, if you do something, if you try hard but you don't do well, you get a bad grade, and there's no input after that. You just get the bad grade, and you're just like, oh darn it,
think about it.
I totally sucked at that.
Think about it. The kid that could have got the bad grade might have really struggled and really applied themselves and really tried to do it, but just couldn't get there. And then you have somebody that kind of
a little feedback would have been great.
Yep. Yeah, that's what we
a little feedback and encouragement, like, okay, here you go. This was a great first attempt, but you can do better. Try it again. Wouldn't that have been amazing if they adopted that way of teaching
and
in the beginning?
Right. It's just a leadership. I do like that. I do like that word mindset. I do believe that really is everything. A good mindset will carry you through, keep that negative self-talk to a minimum. And just always, I'm an eternal optimist. It's funny. I just did an interview yesterday for season 4, episode 1 with Lee Abrams. And when I asked him about something that he wished he knew, he said the same thing, kind of the same thing as you did. Believe in yourself. Just believe that what you bring to the table, know what your strengths are. Don't get caught up in your weaknesses. And if you have an idea, just go for it. That was his advice. Just do it. Go for it.
Yes. So mindset, has different facets. There's the growth mindset we talk about. So continuous learning is very important. And then there's so I talk about the success-driven mindset. You want to be successful. You want to achieve, higher levels of your potential. You have to be success-driven. I'm driven to have good outcomes. So not being afraid to fail. And then the creative mindset is another one I would add to that. You have to embrace creativity. So, and again, that's just your way of thinking. Mindset is your way of thinking, right? So if you could navigate life in your personal and professional life, thinking about mindset, am I having a growth mindset? Am I being creative? Am I driven to success? Then so many wonderful things will happen.
Kind of like this podcast interview we just did.
Exactly.
It was really cool. I'm so glad I got to talk to you. It's you haven't changed. You've grown. You can see it. It's really cool to see how well you're doing. And you have definitely embraced the John Hayes leadership masterclass that we got to experience. And
forever grateful.
I will always be grateful to him and for the people that I got to work with. And I want to just thank you for doing this. This was awesome. Really awesome. Martha, thank you.
Thank you so much, Bill. I was honored that you asked me to be on this podcast, and just catching up with you. It was wonderful. You're always in my thoughts when I'm thinking about just my world is marketing and creative, and you're one of my inspirations because you've always been driven by creativity, and I see it. And it's been nice to just keep in touch through socials and see what you're up to. And it's been great catching up with you lately. It's been a while since we were able to actually talk. And
I feel like we just picked up right where we left off. I felt like
exactly.
I saw you at Adams up in the art room, and we had just, and it's probably been close to 15, 20 years. I didn't do the math, but yeah.
Those are the best relationships, when you could pick up where you left off and being admired and inspired by each other. And
absolutely. Well, thank you again, Martha DeFeo. Well,
thanks so much, Bill.
If people wanted to look at your what's your website? What's
milkmarketing.com. MILK milkmarketing.com.
Okay.
And on Instagram, I'm the Milk Marketing Muse.
Nice. Well, again, thank you. Good luck to you, and wish you all the best. Be well.
Thank you so much, Bill.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, AdYackers. Hope you enjoyed it, because we have many more great conversations planned and guests lined up ready to yak it up. AdYack is sponsored and produced by ASR Media. Theme song was written and performed by Dan Ross. AdYack is the official podcast of the AAF Greater Lehigh Valley Ad Club. Stay hungry, stay humble. Till next time.
This episode of AdYack is rated O for, oh man, that was good.